Hello, everybody. It is me again, the theatric Dyspraxic. Hello to YouTube and to Instagram, which I am live on now, and YouTube later, some other time. I've decided to wear a different hat today. Just instead of my regular cap, I've decided to wear this little thing with the cute little cat. I don't really know exactly what it's from. I think it's from some anime. I have not shaved yet. Sorry, I didn't prepare. Um, but yeah, we today we are going to be doing another live stream with another guest. She's my friend from Canada. She's from the Dyspraxic Circle, and her name is Rosemary Richings. Richings. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's that speech dyspraxia. Um, anyway, yeah, we're just gonna get started, and so let me introduce Rosemary. She is also a blogger, a writer, and she, like me, is also writing a book about her experiences with dyspraxia. So that's one thing that we have in common. And yeah, I suppose we could talk about writing and other things. So let's see where it takes us. All right, let me introduce. Whenever. It's not like a talk show.
Hello, there we go.
Hey, there we are. It's not like a talk show, and it's like, here's my guest, and then they come out from behind the curtain. Of course, I'm sure it's like talk shows nowadays.
Yeah, I guess they're all kind of adapting to this format in a way.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, welcome to my show. Not not really a show, but
Yeah.
it's a almost. So how are you today?
Oh, it's just very, very hot out. I went for a run and I really regret running in this weather, but you know.
Really? Yeah, I mean, you live in Canada, so I figured that the summers would be a bit mild compared to here, at least. But
In
I guess it's hot everywhere at this time of year.
yeah, in some places, yeah, but like my husband, he's from the Ottawa Valley and that's considered to be like a way cooler summer, but I'm in the monkey city of Toronto, so that's a little worse with the pollution.
I heard that Vancouver is like I heard that Vancouver and like the British Columbia area is like the more since it's more like West Coast, it's more like in the vein of like California or something, where it's a bit warmer than other parts of Canada, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Like
it is a
Manitoba,
bit.
I guess I heard Manitoba is like really cold.
Yeah, it is a bit. I went there years ago, but yeah, nice weather there.
Yeah. I would like to visit Canada one day. It's always been a place I'd like to, I've wanted to visit, but one of these days. I'm stuck down here in Texas for now.
When the border reopens.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, and I can afford it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So, what should we start it off with? Talk about whatever.
Well, I guess we can start with the writing side of things.
Yeah, I actually have your blog pulled up. I figure I just have it pulled up just for reference. Your blog definitely looks a lot more professionally done than mine does, for sure.
No, yours is very good too. Well, honestly, I started it about 10 years ago and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I wrote under a pen name. And it was not self-hosted and all that yet. And I'm lucky enough to have a family member who really knows what they're doing with design, and they helped me make it a little
Mm,
nicer and stuff.
yeah, that's what I need. I Mine is just one of those free ones from like Blogspot,
Oh yeah, that's what I started on
and
too.
I really
Yeah.
keep it. Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe one of these days, if I had like more people to help me with stuff like that, like same with my YouTube channel. Um, there's really not, there's not a whole lot that I'm good at as far as like formatting and like web design and stuff. That's just not my strong suit, and So it'd be nice to collaborate with people who are better at that sort of thing, because I'm more on the performing side and, you know, talking and putting my face out there and my voice out there and, you know, writing stuff. But yeah.
There needs to be more of that though, because I'm used to dealing with awkward developers and things like that. And they're most of the ones I've experienced haven't been the best talkers, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. So whenever you started your blog, what was your aim in the beginning?
Well, I started because I was doing a youth theater festival thing in my area at the time. And it was my first
Mhm.
play, and it was an amazing experience. I got to work with a mentor who was someone whose play I'd seen the year before. And I started to meet like an amazing community of people. And I just didn't want that to end. And it seemed like an easy way to at least like try to share my stories.
Yeah, keep it going. And yeah, I totally get what you mean. That's one of the hard things about doing theater, and I've done, you know, many plays, and whenever you are doing a show that you really enjoy and you're working with great people, it's really hard whenever you realize that it's coming to an end, you know.
Yeah.
I've done shows where it's like, oh, thank God it's almost over. But then I've done plays where it's like, man, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to see these people after this, you know.
Yeah, because you have such
Like the
such a
plays that I
personal,
wrote.
intimate experience too, and then it's over, and then it's like, now what?
And it was really hard earlier this year, back in the spring, because I was doing a show that I really enjoyed, and we didn't even get to finish out our run. You know, that was really, and it was like, you know, it's one thing whenever you are doing a show that you really enjoy and you know it's going to end, but you kind of know when it's going to end. You know, you kind of
Hmm.
know it's like, well, we have 2 or 3 weeks and we got this amount of performances, and so we could at least like, it kind of sinks in like, all right, we know how much time we have. But we did like one weekend, and then we did, you know, when we were starting our second weekend for the show, uh, that's whenever they just told us right out of the blue, you know, due to the virus, due to the pandemic, we have to, you know, the theater goes dark.
That's
And
tough.
so that's really, yeah, whenever it's just like suddenly over. And we were planning to revive it again, but that got postponed yet again. It was supposed to be in September, and now they're postponing it until January. And we'll see what happens come
Yeah.
then, you know.
Yeah, my dad's in the industry, and he was filming something, and that got canceled. And it was out in Barrie, and it was a really cool, ambitious project. And like someone got COVID, and then the pandemic started, and they had to really put it on pause for a while.
Yeah, pretty much all those kinds of projects have been shut down for for the time being. Who knows when it's gonna come back up again, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's gonna.
I miss doing plays. I miss doing, you know, acting. Um, and yeah, that's one of the weird things whenever you're used to sort of do it. I mean, most of the time, the periods where I'm not doing a show or I'm not doing any kind of acting project is just because I haven't gotten cast in anything or whatever, you know. But now it's just like it really is like nobody can do that at the moment, you
Yeah,
know. And it's to not know like when the next show is going to be. I mean, it's been almost, you know, it could be could be a while still.
I'm sure it's going to be a completely different thing whenever it's brought back, either in Canada or the US, really. Even just going to a play.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the seating capacity will probably be different. They'll probably can't have as many in attendance for a show. You know, you have to probably people have to wear masks, except I'm assuming the actors who, well, you would. I was talking to my brother about how it's possible that they won't allow people to sit like in the front row, you know, just to
Hmm.
maintain social distancing. Because the actors can't wear masks, you know, when they're performing whatever plays, so they probably have to keep the audience a bit further. from them, depending on what kind of theater space it is. You know, the theater that I work at now, it's a pretty small place, but I've worked at bigger theaters that you can have more of a space between the stage and the audience. But yeah,
The smaller ones, though, that's gonna be really hard to do, just because of the place alone, for sure.
yeah, there's just too much, not enough space between people to be safe. I just hope that this whole thing kind of eases up before too long. But I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of parallels between the last time we had a pandemic like this, which was like 100 years ago. You know, back in like 1918, and I saw an article recently about basically just it reminded me of what was happening now, like with all the masks and stuff. Like there were a lot of businesses that were requiring people to wear masks back then during the Spanish flu epidemic, and a lot of people were protesting that. And it's just kind of interesting to see how we've kind of been through something like this before, except in
Yeah,
a way it was worse back then. You know, we have a little bit easier now, but it's still scary.
a
But
little,
I figure
yeah.
if they were able to get through that back then, we can get through this,
Yeah, and a little
before
bit
too long.
before that was the SARS pandemic. I remember it hit my, well, it wasn't a pandemic necessarily. I think it was very contained, but it hit the tourism industry in my city pretty hard, and it took a while for it to really recuperate. It was pretty tough on us.
And it seems like every few years they have like a new virus concern. You know, there was like Zika, and there was like bird flu and swine flu and all that. And then that's why when I first heard about the coronavirus and people worried about it, I was like, oh, it's just going to be another one of those things. I didn't know it was going to reach this magnitude that it has.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think so either. I went away shortly before that. That was actually my honeymoon I went away on, and I had no idea there was like very few cases at the time. And then I nearly didn't get to leave the country. I was nearly stuck.
Man, yeah, it's really crazy. Um, so when did you start really writing? Like when did that become something you became really passionate about?
Well, it started because I was really struggling to learn how to read, like before my diagnosis, my dyspraxia diagnosis. And
Mhm.
when I finally figured it out, like the act of like putting words on paper, I like had a real appreciation for. And I just started to make up stories in my diary, like when I was a kid. And I just started to experiment more and more with telling stories because it was a platform. It was like one of the few things I was good at that wasn't a barrier.
Absolutely, yeah. It was the same way with me. When I was a kid, I wanted, I became really interested in animation, and that's what I wanted to be, was to be a cartoonist and to work in the animation industry and make, animated series and all that. Because that was at a time when there was a lot of really good like like it was sort of a golden age of television animation and stuff, and that really inspired me. But I discovered early on how much of a struggle it would be for me drawing. It was not something that I was good at. And excuse me, I have a twin sister who's a really talented artist. She's really good at drawing and painting and all that. And seeing her praises that were being bestowed on her, it kind of made me feel kind of inadequate in comparison, because I was always drawing, and then my brothers would come up and they would make fun of my drawings and say,
Mm.
"Oh, that looks weird, it looks warped." And kept I would do it like every day. I'd draw and draw, and it just never seemed to get better. And that was the first time I really remember there being like a barrier, like a disconnect between what my mind was kind of visualizing, and it was just like my hand was never steady. It could never do what I wanted to do, and I
didn't understand why that was. And I remember that being like one of the first times I really recognized that something was amiss. So I kind of gave up at trying to be an artist and trying to draw cartoons. And I got a little bit better, but I kind of came to terms with the fact that it was never going to look how I wanted it to look. But I became more interested in like doing voices and coming up with voices, and I was really good at that. I was good at reading to like the class and all that stuff. And then I became really good at crafting stories and creating characters. And so that's just something that I focused on. And then it was later on when I was like maybe 10 or so that I really would start writing, because I would jot down ideas and I would write stuff for my classes. And I won an award when I was in second grade for a short story that I wrote. And a lot of teachers were saying that I was, talented at coming up at writing stories and stuff. And but it was like you mentioned, it was like the only thing that I was good at. It was the only thing that impressed anybody. And yeah, I think that's why you get into stuff like that. You realize that when you find that one good thing that you're good at, whenever you're bad at everything else, you really stick to it and you develop a strong passion for it.
Absolutely, and I can so relate to that point about drawing because I I love the idea of drawing, and I when I was young, I took classes in it, but there seemed to be a disconnect between like what I was trying to draw and how it would look on paper, and that was just so frustrating to me. And it hurt to hold a pen at one point. I had to get
Yeah,
like specialized sort of like OT stuff early on, and it hurt to hold a pen, and I had to like get some help with holding a pen. And then writing, what I realized is what I really liked about doing drawings was like the characters and the stories and the ideas and things like that.
exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean about it hurting to draw. I mean, I feel like I would get like carpal tunnel syndrome or something like, and I had one of the weird pencil grips. I was like, you just can never get, you just have to like wrap around it in this weird way, and people were always talking about it. Um, I've even had teachers ask me if I was writing with my non-dominant hand. That's how bad it was. Like, because I was left-handed, but they thought, well, are you writing with your left hand, like as a joke? Because my handwriting was so bad, it
Mm.
was so atrocious, and I never really enjoyed writing by hand too much. I mean, I usually will write like ideas and brainstorm and list things out like in notebooks and stuff. That's what I always did when I was a kid. Was I had like notebooks, and I filled up notebooks with ideas, but I didn't do a whole lot of time actually writing them out. It was just like the idea. I was like the big picture type thing.
Yeah,
Um,
same. That's where my habit of
and then
having notebooks started as well, of always having a notebook.
yeah, my parents would complain. It was like notebooks everywhere, all around the house, and and then you could never read them. Like once you open them up, it's like, what is this? Um, and yeah, and of course, once I got into typing, then that just made things so much easier. But I was never good at typing correctly. Like I remember taking a typing class, and they wanted you to, you had to have like your hand resting on like the keyboard a certain way, and you do it. But for me, I always typed like with two fingers and da 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 da,
Hmm.
like that. And I was really fast at it, but I'd always get in trouble for typing wrong. But oh
I
well.
mean, I eventually got good at it only because I started to just more learn it at my own pace, and motivation helped. Is at the time my dad was trying to learn computers, and at least gave me some sort of motivation, even though it was tough. Like, do you remember Mavis Beacon? Do you remember the Mavis Beacon days?
Mavis Beacon.
Teaches typing. She did a whole, she turned it into a fun activity, and it would almost be a video game of like if you could find the keys and things like that.
We didn't do anything like that. That probably would have been probably made things easier on us if we did. It was very like I remember it being a very boring class. It was just like they would just kind of like tell you what to type, and then like if we did it wrong, they're just like no 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 no, put your finger, and they just get on to us. But with typing, I just learned to do it my own way, and that's the thing I think about dyspraxia is that you struggle with certain things, so you find a way to do it a different way that makes it easier for you and more comfortable for you, but it kind of looks weird and awkward to others. And that's kind of how it was with typing. It's like I was always just like da, 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 and people would always like look at me like, wow, like he's really fast at just typing. He only typed with like 2 fingers.
Uh, They took practice for sure. It took lots of practice, lots of typing programs, and MSN Messenger. I was the generation of MSN Messenger, so it was learn to type quicker or not have as much of a social group. Really, that really
Pretty
helped.
much, yeah. Yeah, I still struggle with like text messaging and stuff. That's why I don't really like to message people too much on my phone. Usually I'm very short, with my responses a lot of the times. I'm just very straight to the point. I don't have a whole lot of conversations through text only because it takes so long, and I have like really kind of like stubby fingers, so it's like I make a lot of typos and I have to go back, and it's a longer process for me. So I just rather talk to people, like on the
Yeah, fair
phone, call
enough.
them up, and
Fair enough. I mean, I work in marketing, so I have to do like a crazy amount of typing nowadays and stuff, but it mostly
oh yeah.
helps that I found software that works for me and a lot of accessories that work for me and stuff. That was a real game
I should
changer.
reiterate. I'm just talking about on the phone. I can type just fine, like on a
Oh yeah,
computer
yeah,
and
yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah, that is really tough.
with
It's yeah, with
is it's much
smartphones it's easier
slower on
now.
my
Yeah. Yeah, but the early
but
days. Yeah.
if I'm like on my computer talking to somebody, I can have a really quick conversation, because I just type really fast. I can get a lot out pretty quickly, but it's only on like that, but not not on the phone because I'm just like, ooh, you know.
I mean, it's kind of because it's a touch screen, it's gotten easier now, I think. But I remember my first cell phone was tough because you had to like touch the buttons for sure.
I somehow get the touch screen wrong because I'll like type, I'll like hit what I think is the right button, and it's like the button above it, and it's just like no. But yeah, I mean that's just the thing. It's like we're creative people, but there's those technical limitations of hurdles that we just kind of have to get over. And I still type the same way that I always did. It's not really a problem. You know, it's definitely manageable.
Yeah. And what about for things like note taking? I used to find that really tough, especially by hand.
Yeah. What's interesting about that with me is that when I was about in high school, there was a comedian that I liked who one of his gimmicks was that he could like write with both hands. He was ambidextrous, and I just thought that was cool. So I started practicing that myself, and now I can write with both hands like efficiently. But what's I've discovered is that like my left hand is my dominant hand, and I can write a lot faster with it, but I write a lot neater with my right hand. Um, and I, it was always kind of a struggle, but I guess like I could read my handwriting, but nobody else could. Like if I had to write really fast, like in school and stuff, I suppose I could keep up, but my handwriting always turned out extra sloppy because I couldn't take as much time to to make it more legible.
Yeah.
So if I had to write something quickly and then turn it in, then they would just like dumbfounded, like, I can't read this. It's like, well, slow down.
Yeah, same. I was told that apparently I was ambidextrous, but I had to basically pick one dominant hand, and both were just as weak, but I just had to practice more with one hand. And for a long time, no one could read it. It got slightly more legible with time, but yeah, after a while, it would like physically hurt my hand, which is why once I could use a computer in university, it was a huge game changer for me because at least I was quicker and it didn't hurt.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting how it almost seems like we don't have dominant hands. Like it's like both of our hands are non-dominant. Like we're not
Yeah,
right or left-handed. We're just
yeah,
That's how it feels sometimes. Because my hands, yeah, it's such a shame whenever I mean, I feel bad for people who like have deformed hands or they don't have hands, like they lose their hands or fingers or something, because it must be like, because you realize how much to get through any, pretty much any activity, you have to rely on your hands and your fingers and all that stuff. And like for us, like for me anyway, like my hands are the worst like asset that I have. It's like everything is harder when I'm using my hands. And it's a shame because there's so much that if you want to do it, you have to be skilled with your hands. But my hands are never steady, and I just can never do what I'm setting out to do, and so it makes like regular jobs difficult. Because pretty much most jobs that you have to rely on your hands, and if your
it's true.
hands don't really work with you correctly, it's really frustrating. It's such a challenge, and people don't really understand because they just don't really understand dyspraxia that well.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely true. I think that's what makes employment such a tough thing for people in our community because there's a misunderstanding what you can do versus like what you can pick up as you go along, for sure. And once I switched to working from home, I mean, I'm not a big disclaimer, I'm not going to say everyone should do it, but like once I switched to working from home, it was the first time in my life I actually felt comfortable in a work environment. Whereas before that, I always felt like I was useless at everything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the job that I have currently, I'm not terrible at. I mean, there's some minor things. It's just there's jobs that it's really hard to do it without messing up, and then there's jobs that it's not really difficult as much. I mean, there's challenges, but they're minor. But the difficult thing is being comfortable with it, because I'm a cashier now, and I'm an all right cashier. I mean, I'm a little bit slower than they want me to be, but I'm not too slow, but compared to their standards, they want you to, be a lot faster, and I'm relatively quick. I just kind of fall short, but I'm very uncomfortable in the position because I'm uncomfortable um, with just the amount of multitasking I have to do. I got to scan the items, bag them. And
Mm,
bags are always giving me trouble, and I have to interact with people, and now I have to make sure that people are wearing their masks. And I'm not really good at confrontation, and I've had to experience confrontation recently because I've had to enforce people to wear their masks, or wear them correctly. And the other day I had a woman who was in the line and she didn't have her mask on right, and I got a call from, because I have a phone by my register, I had a call from one of the managers saying, you need to tell that woman to put her mask back on. And I was just like, ma'am, can I get you to pull your mask over your nose? And she just like looks at me and she goes, you can tell them that I'm not shopping here again.
mm.
And I was like, okay.
That must be the really
Yeah.
shitty part
So
of working in customer service right now and in general. I like
yeah.
even just I was going to get some takeout not too long ago and saw someone complaining because they forgot their mask, and apparently they they drove 25 minutes to get there or something like that. But like, that's not really the problem of the person working there. That's not really their problem. And
Yeah.
yeah, it
Well, I know a lot of places, like the place that I work at, if people don't bring a mask or they forget their mask, we hand them out, but a lot of them refuse. A lot of them are like, and they make up excuses like, I have a medical condition, I can't breathe with them on. And it annoys me because, I have to wear a mask all day, and it's hard for me to breathe, and it really constricts your breathing, but you have no choice but to manage. And but these people complain about having to wear them for like half an hour when they're in the store, and they literally hand out masks so that if you forget it, then you at least can have one. But there's just so much resistance to it, and there's no reason why there should be.
yeah.
But apparently 100 years ago, there was the same deal. Like people were still, refusing to wear them or not wearing them correctly, and they enforced it a lot harsher back then because there were people getting arrested for not wearing masks, and I heard somebody got shot by a police officer because he didn't wear a mask, and it's like, wow,
I heard
okay.
a case like that here. It was just some man wouldn't wear a mask in a store and turned into a police chase unnecessarily. It was on the news.
Police,
Yeah,
jeez.
started in a real small town in my province, and yeah, it turned into a police chase because apparently he got violent over it, which is
You
silly.
see a lot of you see a lot of that kind of behavior nowadays because of the internet. You go on YouTube and you see compilations of just all these situations of people acting entitled. And the craziest one I saw recently was a woman who was demanding like a refund for something at Burger King at the drive-through while the building was on fire, and she refused to move or to pull out. She was by the window, and all the employees were outside, and she was yelling at the employees saying she wanted her money back, and everybody had evacuated the building. Like, it was the most ridiculous
Hmm.
thing. It's like, it's really not that hard. It's really to just comply, and this whole thing can go away sooner if we all just work together. But people just, the nature of how some people are, they're just very selfish, and any inconvenience to them, even slight, they act like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, yeah, and to then have to think through all the processing and the everything else, and yeah, adds stress to it for sure.
So how much? I know your dad is an actor, and you mentioned doing theater. How much theater have you done? Was it something that you got really into, or was it just something you've had some exposure to?
Well, I like in my teen and in my university years, I got into it, but um, I've gone more towards the marketing side of things since, and I really do want to go back into theater. It's a great environment, but I've really struggled to get back into it.
Whenever you did the actual performing and actually being involved in the show, were there certain challenges that the dyspraxia kind of came up while you were doing stuff, doing actual like acting?
Mhm.
Were there difficulties with that?
Yeah, I remember there was one time I I had to like I was playing a mother in a play. And it was like very movement based. And it was very hard to learn the movements because I had to communicate without words all these things that were written in a script. And I had to practice it so many times just because it was so hard to get the movements right with all the music and the everything else. But once I did, people told me apparently it made me very sincere and watchable because I was really in the moment. And one time I had to learn how to braid hair, and I don't know how to braid hair, but everyone just assumes most women know how to braid hair. And
Right.
they had to find a big workaround for that, for example.
Oh man, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, choreography is the most difficult thing I think with dyspraxics and theater is having to learn just a sequence of movements and stuff, whether it's a dance number or a fight scene or just a scene that has a lot of physicality and um, a lot of like fluidity and like the blocking of it for sure. I mean, I have so many just memories of having to overcome, having to do dance numbers, and I've done a couple of musicals where I've had to sing and dance at the same time, and that was really hard for me. I remember one particular show that I did. It was one of the craziest shows I ever did backstage. I actually talk about. There's actually a chapter in my book that spends a good deal of time talking about this one particular production, but there was one instance I remember where the lead actress, it was the Addams Family. We were doing the Addams Family, and the lead actress playing Wednesday, I played her fiance, and there was a scene where I'm supposed to put a blindfold on her during a musical number, and she's supposed to like shoot an apple off my head type thing. And
Oh, that's complicated.
I remember, yeah, I remember struggling to get the blindfold on her, and we actually had a big like argument. Like we were friends for a little while during the production, but I explained to her that I was dyspraxic and that I had difficulties and stuff, and she got like we were trying to practice doing the timing of it and me putting and part of the problem was that she had a big head.
Oh, no.
And it was hard to just like, but part of it too is just like, and I didn't want to tell her that I was having trouble putting it over her head because it was too big, so I just told her backstage, I was like, yeah, I'm just having a hard time getting, and she just got so frustrated with me. She went up to the director and said, like, he's saying he can't do the blindfold scene because his hands don't work, and I remember getting so angry, and the director was getting mad. He's like, what are you talking about? It's easy. You just throw it on her, and it was, nobody understood. Like, it was just so tense, and that's just one example. I mean, I did one show where I had to light a cigarette for somebody on the stage, and I could never. I mean, I don't smoke, and anytime I did smoke or something like that, or handle the lighter, like I had somebody else had to handle the lighter for me, and but I had to actually, and I was during a scene where I'm having a conversation with somebody, so I had to remember the lines and have the conversation, and light the cigarette for them, and I had to practice it for quite a bit. And then of course there were all the dance scenes that I had to do. I had to do sword fights, and it's amazing that I've been able to overcome. It still looks awkward and weird, but like the fact that I was able to get it down and do the stuff that I needed. But it's hard for directors and other people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you're trying, there's struggles. There's struggles. Hello, Mike. Thanks for joining, and I appreciate the comment.
Oh, that's Mike. Hello.
Jamming. We're not ignoring you. We're just getting into the conversation.
You were talking about that.
Mike.
You were talking about that word easy. I think that comes up, and that's the most frustrating one of all. And I think it's always really important to have that conversation about, like, you can do it, but it takes a bit longer, because everyone else is just assuming that it will take a shorter period of time. But like, once you do get it, it's amazing, and then and then you figure it out. And if anything, I think that's what makes a lot of dyspraxics really good actors, because of that practice. You practice so much that it makes you almost more interesting on stage or on film or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, in my case, like I've worked with a lot of actors who kind of they feel like because unfortunately one of the most prevalent things you encounter when you're working with actors, working with other actors and stuff is you do deal with a lot of ego. And I mean, even I have a bit of an ego sometimes when I'm doing theater, just because I've done it for so long. I have a lot of experience and stuff. But I've worked with people whose egos are just kind of like they're not really deserved, and they kind of go, like they're just completely full of themselves. And as a result, they don't really try that hard, because they already think, oh, I'm so good. Everybody already thinks I'm so good and so talented. And in my case, I always feel like I have to work harder than everybody in a performance. And in a way, because I work hard, it's kind of like the tortoise and the hare type thing. It's like you
Hmm.
put, you may not, you have to end up working harder, but it ends up paying off, because I've done plays where the audience wasn't nearly as impressed with the others as they were with me. I had people coming out being like, wow, you're an amazing actor. And, I really believed your character. And people who knew me would come to see shows and afterwards say, like, you just really became that character. It wasn't just like you like embodied the character. And that's to know that your hard work pays off in that way. On the flip side of that, as much hard work as you put in, sometimes you do shows where afterwards you don't really get any attention. I've done shows where I've put a lot of effort into the performance and I feel really good afterwards, but then you see the audience and they go to like the other actors and you're just kind of like standing by the stage to yourself and you're just like, what was the point of that? But then you have to keep in mind that you're not doing it for anybody but yourself and for the art, for the craft, because it's something you love to do, you know.
Yeah, and that's what makes the result worth it, the struggle of it worth it. And I think for those that are listening that haven't been as much into theater, I think that's a key learning point if you're struggling with dyspraxia and you're trying to apply that to your everyday life and trying to learn certain skills that are part of your survival, for sure.
Yeah, and maintaining in the theater. I mean, you realize what you can do because it's so easy to avoid things um, because you don't think that you're going to be good at it or you aren't sure how it's going to go because of just your experiences in the past of just being bad at this and that. And when you're in like doing a show where you're playing a part where you have to do something that you're not sure of or that you're not confident in, you end up practicing it, and so you might embarrass yourself at first. I've done any musical, any dance number I've had to do for shows. Um, it's it's really challenging, and I end up embarrassing myself because I turn the wrong way, or like it's just feels so chaotic. But by the time we actually get to the performance, like I'm able, I have to keep it mechanical for sure. It's hard to really, you have to just keep it like the only way you can be in character is just your facial expression,
Yeah.
keeping your face like, how, but then everything else is like, I'm just trying to get through the scene, make sure that the dance goes right or whatever I'm having to do, the fight scene, whatever. And you feel good about it afterwards though, because you're just like, I got through it, I managed it. And I think that's one of the things that people with dyspraxia should keep in mind is that it doesn't mean you can't do things. It doesn't mean if there's something that you want to do, the dyspraxia is not going to stop you. It'll pose some challenges, but you overcome those challenges and you find a way to manage. And the more you do, like with acting, the more you do it, the better you get. Even if you're dyspraxic, you do get better. I've gotten better as an actor through every show that I've done. Something has improved. I've gained something from it. And I know that the more shows that I do in the future, I'm going to get better than I am now. It's just the way it goes. And it's just like Mike, for instance. He's a very talented musician. He plays the keyboards really well. He's a good
Hmm.
singer. And he's dyspraxic. He's just another example of somebody who can do something really well despite having those challenges. And I'm sure there were things with him that were difficult, at first with trying to learn the keyboards and trying to be getting the music. But it's really, um, I don't know, it makes you feel good about yourself, and you feel like you've accomplished something when you look back and you've seen what you've overcome and how you've improved.
Yeah, and I think that's the big lesson too from doing theater too. It's you learn so much from the communication side of things, from having to tell people I can do this or I can't do that, or let's work around this. And that for me in the early days was like the best part of things, was a real game changer to have a tool to practice being able to tell people like what could work for me and finding a workaround and being willing to practice more and more, for sure.
See, that's one way. That's one thing that I think your experiences and my experiences are different. Is that you were diagnosed when you were younger, and then it took. I was never diagnosed, but it took me years to really discover what was wrong. I'm not saying you had it easier, but like
Yeah,
it's just different experiences.
yeah,
And of course, there's there's other people that we know who were older than I am when they discovered dyspraxia. It's just kind of it's a shame that people have to go through so long in their life without ever hearing about it and discovering it. But maybe talk a little bit about your what the experience was like, how it um, improved things for you, how it made certain things easier, and maybe how the diagnosis maybe posed some challenges, because I'm sure just having that label or having the diagnosis maybe had other effects that, because it's easy to think, oh, you had it so much easier
hmm,
because it was found out younger, but you still had your struggles. You still struggle with it even if it was recognized.
that's
So yeah,
true.
maybe go a little bit into that.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed really young. I was only about like 4 or 5. And the timing of it was a little weird because it was right around the time when the medical community didn't really know much about it really yet. And I was diagnosed too young. So the thing is, I didn't have very good tools to articulate what I was going through. Sure, I had the diagnosis, but as soon as I had the diagnosis, the hardest part was like, how do you describe it to a teacher? How do you describe it to someone in a workplace? Like, how do you describe it to a
Yeah,
friend? Like, the awareness was the shittiest part. But I feel like the best thing it gave me
yeah.
was more time to practice with trying to figure those things out.
We had more understanding. It's like, well, you kind of understand. Okay, this is why I struggle. But being like that young, I mean, it's hard to explain anything when you're that young. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't even have the language capacity, because you're still learning, vocabulary. You're still learning how to formulate sentences. And I could imagine that it's like basically you knew about this as young as you could remember, but I could imagine you probably didn't even know that much about it, at that age, and
No.
people just told you you had it, and you were just like, okay, I get, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I can imagine like trying to explain it to like a teacher. I mean, it's hard for me as an adult to explain dyspraxia to certain people, and so I can't imagine being a kid trying to explain it. And in my case, it was like I tried to explain things to people, but I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't even know what dyspraxia was. I didn't even understand it, so I couldn't explain it to other people. Um, but I guess it must have been a bit easier just knowing that if you struggle, you at least have that there's a reason for it. You
Yeah.
know that there's a cause.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I think for so many years, what I was completely wrong about was I thought the diagnosis was the worst part. But if anything, it meant that like when I was really struggling with something, at least it would give me something to justify it with. At least I could say, oh, that's my
Mhm.
dyspraxia. So I guess I'm going to have to do something about that. But it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, for so many years, it was so hard to explain to anybody like how they could help. Like, as soon as I got older, people would say, well, how can I help you? And I would say, well, I don't know. I mean, I had one set of things that when I was in school, people would provide accommodations for, but it's not the same thing now. So how do I figure that out? And I only really figured that out recently for the most part, really.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you figure that out?
Well, communities like the one we're both part of, like the Dyspraxic Life magazine, and I started to do more reading and watch a
Mhm.
lot of videos on it. And yeah, so just doing my research and talking to people and stuff like that, like at least I could sort of understand. And I kept a diary too, like for so many years at least, just like trying to write down what I was going through, at least like I started to pick up on patterns, and that helped a lot.
Um, well, for one, like what you said about, I totally identify with what you're saying about other people, because there's always those people who don't understand it, and they're just kind of like, they're kind of like, they don't really want to understand it. They're just kind of like indifferent to it. But then there's those people who don't understand it, but they want to help and they want to accommodate you, but they don't know how, and you don't know how they could, you know. And I struggle. That's something I deal with sometimes now. I dealt with that when I was working at the restaurant I was working at. In fact, just last night, my friend invited me out to a sort of a miniature golf course, and I haven't played golf since like high school, and I was never good at it. And it was, we were just out having fun. Um, but of course, I was, struggling, and I was making fun of myself, because that's just what I do.
Mm.
And he knows I'm dyspraxic. He doesn't know much about it. He just knows that I am. And he was trying to give me pointers, and I had to kind of explain to him, like, well, it's not that I don't know what to do. It's not that I don't know how to hold it correctly. It's just that for some reason, like, my hands won't do what my brain is. And that's just one example where it's like it wasn't really a big deal, but there were other examples where it's like people would try to help me and try to accommodate and try to assist, and it just wouldn't work, and they would get frustrated because they felt like they were failing. And
Yeah.
but it's good. It's good to have like that community, like the one we're in, the one you mentioned. And I didn't really keep like a diary when I was younger, but I did for school projects and just on my own. I did sort of write stuff where I talked about my experiences. And this is, I mean, before I even knew I was dyspraxic, before I knew anything. I mean, it was the difficult thing for me, of course, was that I thought I was made to believe that I was on the autism spectrum. And
Mm.
even though I wasn't, like, being labeled with that caused a lot of problems in my life. And that I think definitely fed into my mental health issues for sure. But I did write about my experiences in some ways, and now looking back on those things, I can really examine where things went south, where, oh, that makes sense now. And it's putting those things together and doing my blog where I write about things that I'm dealing with now, like I was writing about my being a server, and how the dyspraxia was affecting that, and currently at my, current job. So just writing about it, going back to, to the writing thing, just writing about it, you understand things a lot more. There's clarity.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
in your case, even though you knew what was, what it was, you probably didn't really understand it as much as you do now, as you're older, and you've, written things more. And yeah, you kind of put the pieces together, and also talking to other people, because I don't really talk to, before I was part of the group, I didn't really talk to a lot of dyspraxics. I just kind of dealt with it on my own. And now I'm kind of seeing like where I'm actually meeting people where it's like, oh, we get each other, kind of.
Yeah, that's what's
We
been
have a
great
lot of
about
the
this
same struggles.
community, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest thing about being able to turn it into some form of expression, like writing or blogging or something like that, because at least you're separating the experience from what you're going through, so you can go back to it later and have an aha moment and being able to use that as an example. Like I've found that really helpful, like even being able to reflect on the things I experience with my dyspraxia in my everyday life to be able to go back on it later and to be able to talk to someone who doesn't really get it and to say, well, here's an example of where this was really tough. And that's been really, really helpful
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. And you don't really think about it too much, as you're going through it, because it's just, but then then you write about it, and it puts things in a different, whenever you write about things that you've experienced, it puts it in a different perspective. You see it sort of like almost objectively. I mean, not exactly, but you see it, you kind of like, you can disassociate yourself from the bigger picture, and kind of look at it from like the outside, from like a reader's perspective, and things make a lot more sense, it seems, once you actually put it out into words. Oh, good night, Mike.
All right.
Thanks
Good
for
night,
joining
Mike.
us. You can always check out this later. Anybody who wasn't able to see this live, I'll be posting it, later. Um, but yeah, that's one of the cathartic things about writing is being able to. That's how you express yourself. You put it into words, and that's how it's been with my blog, and especially with my book. And I'm sure it's been the same with you.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've also found like even just showing it to people, there's something therapeutic about showing it to people. And then it's always surprising the amount of times it would make someone question it and make someone be like, oh, well, maybe my daughter has it, or like that person at work has it. Like even my husband was working with a photographer on his company website, and like he was having trouble processing instructions, and he went at a slower pace because he was used to my dyspraxia. And even just like mentioning that meant that like, oh, someone hadn't had a moment where they said, oh yeah, well, maybe I have that too. And I think that's the same with writing, that's the same with talking about it, for sure.
Well, a perfect example is a friend of mine that I had made, who was also writing and stuff, and I let her sort of read like an early version of my book, um, and she was reading about it, and she had one of those moments where it's like, oh, like I identify with a lot of this stuff, and a lot of this is like stuff that I felt like I've experienced that I didn't really understand. And see you later, Billy.
All right, see you later,
Um,
Billy.
but like she kind of had that aha moment, like I think I might be dyspraxic. Like I feel like this explains a lot. And a lot of people, they go through their lives and it's just like they kind of put it on the back burner. They put it in the back of their minds because they don't want to deal with it, because it's something they don't understand. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that confuses them. And I've always been the kind of person that kind of takes things head on, like deep things like that, like struggles. And um, so I always kind of questioned it, but I didn't really make the connection early on, that these different issues were related. I just knew I had struggles with these different tasks and different aspects. And it took a long time to realize that these are all part of like a tapestry of symptoms on a spectrum.
Hmm. I think that's about the thing about disabilities in general. It's much easier for, like, if it's a physical thing, for someone to be like, oh, they've got a limp, or they're walking with a cane, or like they're in a wheelchair, but neurological, you can't see it. So, like, unless you're an expert and you deal with it every day, it's very hard to grasp how that's making everything else work.
Exactly.